You've got until Tuesday. And that's my open. Tell me what you think on my Facebook page or Twitter, hashtag Judge Jeanine. And joining me now is the executive vice president of the Trump Organization and son of Donald Trump Jr., Eric Trump. Good evening.
How are you?
I am
Good
fine.
To be with you.
How are you?
I love that.
We are in a mess here.
We are.
You are basically new to politics. 9 days to go. As you look back at all of this, what is the thing that shocked you most?
How corrupt the system is. Honestly, how corrupt the system is. I'm a civilian, a plain civilian. We've never been in politics. And when you go from scandal to scandal to scandal, you look at the Clinton Foundation. It's one of the great Ponzi schemes in modern day history. You look at, the Clintons making $250 million in the last 15 years, effectively, since leaving the Oval Office. You look at the email scandals. You look at Donna Brazile giving Hillary Clinton, questions ahead of the debates. I mean, you go scandal to scandal, not to mention, obviously, all the scandals from, Watergate and then, Clinton getting impeached.
Well, selling the Lincoln bedroom and all of the file gates and everything. Everywhere they go, there's a scandal.
And honestly, it almost makes me lose a lot of faith in the government. I mean, it's really, really sad. And you don't see it until you're front and center. And you know what? Listen, I'm not a fan of people stealing emails. But the one thing I'll tell you that's come out of the WikiLeaks is actually shown how bad our system truly is. When you look at those Project Veritas videos, it's horrible. I mean, you have DNC operatives who are incredibly close to Robbie Mook, who have been to the White House 350 times, who are bragging about inciting riots that shut down a city. I mean, this is what these people do in politics.
Eric,
it's horrible.
When they say that, that your father is inciting violence, and then we find out that they're the ones who are inciting the violence, they talk out of both sides of their mouth, and then we find out from WikiLeaks that that's just not the case. So why were they so close? Why was Hillary beating your dad? And we're going to get to the numbers now, which are totally different. Yeah. What do you think Americans, are they not thinking?
No, I think so many of the polls are honestly not correct. I mean, so many of the polls, you had some of the polls that were out this week that were oversampling Democrats by 12%, and you're sitting there saying, give me a break. I mean, Obama in his first term won by 5%, and it doesn't even compare. So I don't know, but it's really, really amazing. I think people are finally seeing it. I think people are seeing how corrupt the system is, having a front row seat to it. And again, as a civilian, I could never believe it. I could never imagine that people would stoop to the lows that they stoop to, especially in these political campaigns. But they will do anything to maintain power because it lines their own pocket. It keeps them in the Marvel offices. They're
lining the pockets of the people around them as well. It's almost as though it's an organized criminal enterprise because this octopus of connections and this cesspool of corruption, they're all making money. But I want to move on because we could both go on forever on this. But the numbers now, what do they tell us?
Listen, we're doing great. We're doing absolutely great. You look at early voting in Florida. You look at early voting in Ohio. You look at early voting in North Carolina, Nevada. I mean, so many places. We are doing so well.
What do the exit polls tell you?
They're telling us a great, great, great story. I mean, Republicans are up tremendously. Democrats are down. Independents are bigger than ever this election cycle. Independents, as you know, break heavily toward us. People want something new. They don't want the same nonsense that they see every single day. I mean, Hillary, and I say this all the time, Hillary has been a politician longer than I've been alive. I mean, who feels comfortable that she can actually fix the mess that we're in as a country? We've got $20 trillion worth of debt. We've got broken educational systems. We have a broken military. We have a broken VA. Median income in this country hasn't gone up in 15 years. I talk about it all the time. Median income hasn't gone up in 15 years. You look at Obamacare. Obamacare might be the greatest lie in the history of politics. They said you were going to be able to keep your doctor, you were going to be able to keep your plan. The average family was going to save $2,500 a year. In Arizona, the premiums are up 116%.
It's crazy.
And you know what? There's no accountability. And that's the frustrating thing.
And there's no consequence.
In the real world, in private industry, there's accountability. When you say something and the reverse happens, you're held accountable. I mean, there's no accountability.
None. What about the numbers? 12 points last week, and now there's a 2-point spread in the ABC poll, and that's even before all this stuff came out with Jim Comey announcing the reopening that investigation. Talk to me about that.
We're going to win. I mean, it's just that simple. People want their country back. People want a voice. People want to stop these corrupt politicians. Say what you will about my father. He's a man that can't be bribed. He's a man that can't be bought. He's a man who's put $100 million of his own money into this campaign. This is tough stuff, as you know. I mean, it's tough on him. It's tough on the whole family. I mean, it's tough stuff. This isn't an easy process. He's doing this. This country has given my father everything. It's given our family everything. That's why he's doing it, because he's seeing our country flushed down the tubes by incompetent politicians.
You know what impresses people the most? I have to tell you this, Eric. I look at you. I was in Florida with Lara, I don't know, Thursday, Friday. I've lost the days. And Donald Jr. and Ivanka and her husband. And, you know, Ivanka has a baby in the middle of all of this. You kids are so committed. Your family is so connected. You are the epitome of what family is all about. Do you realize that if your dad wins, I mean, you know, I love your dad, and I'll leave that aside, but America's blown away by how close you are as a family.
Yeah, there's no question. And by the way, if no one else is going to fight for him, and I mean that, you know who's fighting for him? It's the American people. He doesn't have the special interests. He doesn't have these corporations coming out, Wall Street giving him hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars. He doesn't have the super PACs. He doesn't have the entire mainstream media. You know who fights for him? His family. And you know who else fights for him? The American people. And by the way, together we're going to win this thing. There's no question we're going to win this thing. We have to take back our country. I mean, we have to win. Our country cannot survive another 4 years of the mess we're in. And you know the depressing thing to me, John? They can't even admit the problems that we have. They can't admit that $20 trillion is an almost unsurmountable amount of debt. They can't admit that our VA is in shambles. They can't admit that Obamacare failed. They can't admit that we have a depleted military. They can't admit that all of our jobs are going overseas. They don't even talk about these problems. In fact, they say that everything's wonderful. And it's so, so sad. You better recognize the problems, because we've got issues, and my father will do a great job fixing this nation.
All right, Eric Trump. I'm dying to ask you what you're going to do when this is over, but we don't have time.
Going back to work.
Eric Trump, so good to have you here. Thanks so much for being with us on Justice. Now, let's hear from both candidates on the trail today as they battle it out just days before the election.
I will continue to address and expose the criminal corruption of Hillary Clinton and its threat to the survival of our democracy. But I also want to spend these next 9 days with the wonderful people of this country talking about my vision for making America great again. And let's talk positive.
Donald Trump is doing his best to confuse, mislead, and discourage the American people. I mean, he's such a downer, right? And it's time for him to stop fear-mongering, stop distracting from what's really at stake, and frankly, stop disgracing our democracy. We can't let him get away with this.
Joining me now with reaction, Trump campaign senior communications advisor Jason Miller. All right, Jason, thanks so much for being with us tonight on Justice. I know you're quite busy.
Thank you for having me.
Our pleasure. No, listen, 9 days. I don't even want to ask you what your schedule is like, but let's talk about the polls. What do we know as we sit here tonight?
All right, so here's what we know. National polls are moving in the right direction. We see the LA Times.
Which in your mind is moving toward Donald Trump.
Yes, moving towards, yeah, absolutely. Got to make sure that's clear. Mr. Trump's had a very good week. Not only does the LA Times poll have him in front by 2 points, but there's been a big development. That ABC Washington Post poll that came out last week, as you mentioned earlier, that said Mr. Trump was down 12 points. First of all, we don't think he was ever down 12 points. I think that was outside. But the entire week, it's been moving. Republicans have been coming home. That was the first thing. Beginning of the week, we had Republicans coming home, making a lot of noise. Then the news about the Obamacare premiums came out. That fundamentally, when we look back on this race, this will be a huge week for this campaign, because not only was it Mr. Trump talking about how we need to repeal Obamacare, but every newspaper and every newscast in the country was talking about the local state increases. As you guys talked about Arizona with 116%. Don't forget about Pennsylvania with a 53%. Every state has some kind of horror story about just how much these hikes are going up. And think about this for a moment. If you're, at a certain point, this becomes, can you afford rent? Or can you afford to pay your health care?
I have a story for you, Jason. A friend of mine who was a sitting district attorney emailed that his health care is now more than his mortgage and his taxes combined. Everything, his health care costs more than his mortgage. It's crazy.
Well, and even if you're not going through Obamacare, if you own a small business, what it's doing to the plans that you have to offer and the way that premiums are spiking, the cancellation letters that people are getting, this is some scary scary stuff. So this hit this week, and this was a shockwave.
And then we had another shock.
Then we had another shock where it turns out through these WikiLeaks emails that came out, there's email with a memo from Doug Band, who's kind of the partner in crime. I used to say that tongue-in-cheek, although I'm not sure how tongue-in-cheek that is anymore, with Bill Clinton, where they literally had a plan laid out. Here's how we can go and make $66 million effectively selling access to office. Here's our plan, to the point where the Clinton Foundation had to consult an outside law firm to see if this plan would even go and jeopardize their nonprofit charitable status, which is pretty big stuff. That was front page news. And then we had the bombshell on Friday. And so, but the numbers, the net effect on this
The bombshell, of course, being the FBI reopening the case.
Yes. And so what we saw this week was with the Republicans coming home, with the Obamacare premiums, with all this news, at the same time while Donald Trump is out there laying out his vision for America, his plan for an urban renewal, how we're going to repair and rebuild our inner cities. All of a sudden, this race, I mean, we believe we're leading, but even the most hardened media skeptic says it's a jump ball.
Well, okay, and the truth is that this has been the craziest election that I've ever seen in my lifetime, and most people as well. But do you expect any dirt being dropped on you before the election by the Clinton campaign?
Look, you can't imagine going into last week of a campaign and not to be attacked from somewhere.